personally looking forward to this session today on on the topic of predictive customer lifetime value modeling. And this is part of our series that we've been running over the last many weeks now in terms of bringing in the technical topics, trying to understand how various different aspects of AI and analytics can be utilized to answer various different business questions across the industries and the industry functions. We had the three AI thought leader and mentor, Sarabjot Singh Anand, presenting, and discussing with us the recommender engines last week. And today we have our yet another three AI thought leader and mentor, Professor Amar Saxena, who will be taking us through this concept of predictive customer life cycle, customer lifetime value modeling. So without further ado, I'll quickly introduce Professor Amar to all of you, and then hand it over to him for him to take us through the topic today. Professor Amar is a senior analytics professional, with a very strong, multifaceted experience. He's been with the industry for about 20 years, having worked with the companies like GE Capital, HSBC, TCS, RBS, which is Royal Bank of Scotland Business Services, and Reliance Retail. Uh, Professor Amar is currently associated with Kriya University. He is also a fellow of IIM Ahmedabad. He brings in proven experience in setting up of offshore analytics teams completely integrated with host organizations across the entire spectrum of functions, such as developing new business, creating new capabilities for showcasing to the customers, designing efficient analytical solutions, transitioning and redesigning processes, and managing strong delivery teams. With that, Amar, I'll hand it over to you, and we are all ears and all eyes towards yourself. Thank you so much.
Very good morning to you, to each and every one of you. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. We are indeed in the middle of an extraordinary situation, and this is a once in a lifetime scenario that we are having. And so it is heartening to see that you all are taking the time to upskill yourself, because the only thing that will actually help you is knowledge. And so this is definitely the best way forward. Um, you know, Divesh has definitely introduced me. The only thing I will say is, I have a good mix of corporate as well as academic experience. For around 20 years, I was in the corporate world, and for the last 3-4 years, I've been associated with academics. So I've seen both sides of the world. And I'll try to bring both these aspects into my presentation today. So welcome once again to this webinar on customer lifetime value, and we'll go into this. Now, I think what I was talking to Devesh. We have a very diverse audience here, coming from a lot of varied background and experiences, and this makes my task a little difficult, because I want to keep this presentation completely relevant to the entire audience. Plus on top of that, 1 hour is for a topic like customer lifetime value. I think it's a little short. So these are the two challenges that I'll be walking with: the tightrope. One is a very diverse audience, and other is the complex area like CLV. But still, my endeavor would be to ensure that you are able to take away some important learnings from this webinar, something which you can apply right away, or at least you are knowledgeable about it to know how to proceed about it. Okay, so this is so what I'm going to do is I'll spend some time on introduction and the relevance of this very important analytic area. I will then quickly move into the simple ways to implement customer lifetime value. Okay, and here we'll be working um, with a couple of Excel files. We'll actually get our hands dirty, roll up our sleeves, and do that. And along the way, I will the underlying theme would be to convey to you the complexity of the field and why it is important. And in the end, we'll come up with some of the highlights, some of the important areas. So with that little long introduction, let's just right dive in. Do you recognize this gentleman? Anybody, do you recognize this gentleman? Yes, a lot of you would have recognized. He is none other than the wonderful athlete called Michael Phelps, right? And what is the greatness about it? he is actually, been credited. He has got 18 gold medals, which is like unheard of. He is, if not the best athlete in the world, then he is definitely the most decorated athlete of all times. So, what can other athletes learn from him? How can they emulate his success? Possibly follow his training regime? Yes, his training regime was indeed very strong, and he did used to train very hard. In fact, almost like a demigod. At the peak season, he clocked 50 miles per week in the pool. That's like humongous, and yet more hours in the gym. So, for other athletes wishing to join Phelps' ranks, does it sound all simple? Formula to replicate: train hard, eat smart, get stronger, perform better, and voila, you'll be able to win an Olympic gold. Is that so simple? Well, things are not that simple, right? In Will that help? In short, no. And why will that not help? It is because Michael Phelps, as a person, as a physical specimen, Michael Phelps was born to swim. He had double joint ankle, size 14 feet. That created an almost dolphin-like thirst. So if he got into the pool, he almost got a dolphin-like thirst. He had 6 feet 4 inches. He was tall, but his fingertip to fingertip was 6 feet 7 inches, which means that he could actually swim much faster. Almost like a person who was several inches taller than him. And on top of that, he had low lactic acid, which means that he could actually recover from a physical exertion very quickly. Biomechanically and metabolically, Phelps was born with a substantial and natural advantage in the pool. And that is why he was able to achieve what he has been able to do. But wait a second. Why are we discussing all these things? What does Michael Phelps have to do with customer lifetime value? This webinar is about customer lifetime value. Well, very simply, the inherent goodness of Michael Phelps is an analog to one of the pillars of customer centric marketing. So even before a customer makes their first purchase with you or with a company, much of their potential value is already there, just as Phelps' natural physical advantage was there when he was born. Sure, you can drag the customer into marketing and sales gym and develop that value a bit further. But by how much really depends on the number of factors. You certainly won't be able to transform the vast majority of your base into your best, most quote unquote Phelps like class customer, right? On the other hand, knowing your best customers, R is not so clear from standing. So, how can you separate? So essentially you have thousands of customers. How can you find out who are your customers who are like Michael Phelps, who have a lot of potential? And to get the clearest picture of the customer's value means harnessing the insights that come from playing the long game, one that projects that entire lifetime with you. So essentially when a customer joins in, can you project that entire lifetime? How is the lifetime going to value? And if you can project that, if you can understand that lifetime value, it's a wonderful thing. You'll be able to find out those nuggets, those beautiful sweet spots among your customer database. And that is the importance of this concept called customer lifetime value, which a lot of you would be aware of. So with a little bit that introduction, let's go further. What is customer lifetime value? Very simply put, it's the net present value of profits linked to one specific customer once the customer has been acquired. And typically you subtract the incremental cost over the entire lifetime. So acquisition costs typically are not included because that is a sunk cost. The cost, whether it is $100 or $50 or whatever, that's a sunk cost. That is what I have spent in acquiring the customer. Now, what is the value that I'm going to derive? That is something which I will look at. Okay. So let's look at the importance, I'll go further. So for example, yeah. Okay. So businesses, really flourish when there is a healthy customer development and retention process. So develop the customer and then retain them. The customer lifetime value is a framework that helps businesses develop these strategies to extract incremental value. How much should I promote to a customer? Among these four customers, should I promote to this 1,000 customer or should I promote to this 100? given your past, so for example, if I are doing, the customer has already been on books for 3 years, there is a past value that the customer has, and he is likely to remain with us for next 4 years. Using these two things, we can actually find that out. So CLV is really the discounted value of the future profits generated, right? CLV is also an extremely important marketing metrics, right? So how many times, in a situation, and as a consultant, I've seen this, where the CEO says, "Oh my God, the marketing team is always asking for money, but I really don't know how they're spending." This is one of the very important metrics. Just like you have the net promoter score. Similarly, this one also, customer lifetime value. To remain relevant, really, marketing needs to develop these kind of key statistics if it wants to connect with the top management and get the resources that they are required. The commonly used marketing metrics, what are they? We look at sales, we look at market share, but these measures are really aggregate 30,000 feet. How are you really going to increase sale? I need that 5,000 feet, or rather 1,000 feet view, right? And this is where this customer lifetime value comes in, right? Especially in the changing environment, we are living in an extremely dynamic environment right now, isn't it? In front of our eyes, all the businesses are getting disrupted. So that actually increases the importance of customer lifetime value even more. Because you have the 30,000 feet view of sales, how are you going to increase sales? I need to get down to the customer. This customer, I'm going to contact this particular customer. I'll derive at least $100 additional value from this customer. I need to get down to those basics. But unfortunately, this concept is not widely used. But it is not because it is not useful. It is because it is hard to calculate. It's a little complex. And my endeavor would be in this presentation to go, to help you to appreciate this, right? Yeah. So we are really talking about customers. So CLV really gives us, so really the implications for marketing are very clear. Understand your customer. There, we live, just the other day I was reading about it, one of the way to target the customers better is segmentation. But segmentation has become obsolete in this world of AI. Really contradictory thing, isn't it? Which is really like, segmentation is important, yet it has become obsolete. What we mean is segmentation in the traditional sense used to segment the population into like 4, 5, 10, 12, 15, a very small finite number. But here, really, each and every customer is a separate person in their individual right. Can I understand each and every customer and customize my strategy to them? And that is what this whole function of CRM is developing in that direction. So if Google right now is considered to be a strong competitor, for example, they are entering the banking and financial services. They, few months back, last November, they announced their intention. Why are they so important? Because they have the ability to understand each and every customer in considerable depth. So the manner in which they harvest and harness the data is amazing. This implies that a tremendous focus on relationship with customers rather than on transactions made on them. Focus on the relationship, not on the transactions. And when, for example, will the merger of two banks help? The merger always is you are acquiring the customers. Are you able to manage the customers well? That's the important part. And so the customers differ in their needs. And so selecting the customers also require the company to understand the value. So say, for example, one of the things which is happening nowadays is, the inorganic expansion that companies go. If you're going in for inorganic expansion, that is really, you are acquiring the customers. The most important thing in growing the business is, are you able to manage your customers well? And this CRM tool, which is customer lifetime value, helps you to actually manage your customers better, right? So in brief, what are we really saying? The analytic area is CRM. The solution is customer lifetime value. What are the questions that it'll answer? It'll answer questions like what type of person they are, your customers are, who else are they like, what did my customers do, what are they likely to buy, a lot of things. And this helps in decisioning, like how much should I spend on advertising? Is advertising really good? Should I contact them through email? Effective targeting. How can I target my customers better? How can I migrate my customers from one segment to another? These are all the questions. So put it into larger perspective. This is how customer lifetime value fits in the entire scheme of things. Okay. So so this customer lifetime value, what is that? It is really, in very simple terms, the average sales value multiplied by number of transactions multiplied by the retention, right? Let's take the example of a retail chain. I was in Reliance Retail for some time. So on telecom, the average ARPU of a customer is 150 rupees. Number of times he does that, 12. So that's the whole thing. If he takes a number, how many months is he going to remain with you? If I multiply all those things, I get to know my customer lifetime value. Into my profit margin, that's my value. And there are certain basic truths. We all know, I don't need to say it again, but still a 5% increase in retention produces 25% increase in profit. Acquiring customers is significantly more costly than retaining them. Profitability from an existing customer. That is why, for those of you who work in a banking environment, what is one of the important matrices that the banks use? How many products that the person has from us? Is it 1.1, 1.2, 2.5, 3.1, 4.2? The more the number of products the customer has with you, the less likely that he's going to attract. The more likelihood that you'll be able to have a profitable relationship and engagement with them, right? So very simply put, lifetime value of a customer will depend on four things. The relationship duration, how many months or how many years can I have the relationship? Can I engage my customer? What is my expected revenue? What is the cost that I need to have? Like the life cycle, there needs to be a maintenance, right? I need to keep on connecting with my customers through marketing, through advertising, through email, whatever. What is my servicing cost? And what is my discount factor? This is a very underrated thing, but very important, discount factor. The discount factor that you'll use in US as compared to India, as compared to China, is going to be very different. So these are the four things, four pillars on which the analytics of customer lifetime value really depends. Okay. And as we go ahead, I'll be sharing some of the examples also with you. Okay. Let's take this simple example. Assume that a firm spends $2 for mailing and printing a catalog. It's a catalog company, which is sent to 1 million prospects. Simple, right? The response rate of the mailing is 1%. Okay, so out of 1 million prospects, 1% of them will respond. Prospects who become customers spend around $200 per year, as long as they are still active customers. A customer has a probability of attracting 20 years. So if I get 100 customers right now, next year only 80 customers will be left, 20 will go away. If the customer attracts, there is no revenue that I can make. I also spend $20 per year in marketing, servicing the customer. The profit margin is 50%, discounting rate is 50. Let's look at this. Oops. Let me see how can I. Okay. Are you all able to see my Excel? No, let me open it.
So yeah, I think it's opening up, Amar.
It's
Yeah.
opening up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are you able to see my Excel file now?
No. So what you would need to do is, Amar, instead of so if you share content,
Yeah.
so you can share your screen. So instead of sharing a particular program, if you could just click on share screen,
Yeah.
then we should be able to
Are you
see
able to
it.
see now?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. So let me expand this so that you are able to see. I hope you all are able to see it properly. So essentially, what we had was there is an 80% retention rate, right? 20% attrition, revenue $200, 50% profit margin, which means the gross profit, if still a customer, I make from the customer is $100 per year. $20 is the marketing cost, which means that $80 is the net annual profit. Discount rate is 15%. Acquisition cost $2. 1 million mailing has been sent. That means the total mailing cost is 2 million. 1% is the response rate. That means I acquire 10,000 customers. So what is the cost of acquiring? 2 million by 10,000, $200, right? Let's do this. Year 1 to year 10. Every year, say for example, there is one customer. Next year, I'm going to have 0.8 customer. After that, I'm going to have 0.64. So this is the formula I've created. Expected profit is $80, right? $80 is my expected annual profit. The discount multiplier is 1, which is really this formula 1 upon 1 plus discount to the power t minus 1, the standard formula which you have read in class 8 while compounding, right? It's a reverse compounding. I'm doing that. So the net discounted profit is multiply all these three things. So 1 into 80, $80. Here I get this. So this is really 64 into this discount multiplier. I get this expected. How did I get this expected profit? This this $80 which is there, right? This $80 into the retention rate. How many customers are there? Customers into the profit is 64. 0.8 customers into 80 is $64. $64. I put them in the current value. The current value of the $64 is $56. That is all I'm trying to do. After 1 year, to repeat, after 1 year, 0.8 customers are left. So $80 is the profit I make on one customer. I'll make $64 profit on 0.8 customers. If I convert it into the net present value, I get 56. Similarly, I've done it for all the years. As you go ahead, the number of years, it really doesn't matter whether it is 10 years or 11 years or 12 years, because the contribution of the future years is so little. So my net discounted profit is $256. I add it for 10 years. I can do it for 20 years also, and this will go from 256 probably to 260. Doesn't really matter. Okay. Now some of the key part, 15% discount rate. Let me ensure that you see the entire screen. Yeah. Okay. So look at this. If I move this to 10%, my net discounted profit actually increases. So this is a very simple example. I can play around with the numbers and I can get to know about it. Okay. Let me get back to my presentation. Right? So my lifetime value of a customer is really equal to the expected net profit, the contribution during time t, divided by the discounting rate. Discounting rate, as is already seen, 1 plus discounting rate to the power t minus 1. And now once we have this lifetime value, what is this value? Value is really revenue minus cost. We had looked at that, isn't it? $100 is the profit, and $20 is the marketing spend. 100 minus 20, 80. So in a very simple manner, this is what we have been able to do, right? And this is so. What has this lifetime value been able to tell us about it? It says that it told us that the amount that we can spend on acquiring the customer is $256, right? How much amount can we spend? We should, if we are spending anything more than $256, we are going to incur a loss. How much money are we spending in acquiring our customers? $200, which means that on every customer that we are acquiring, we are making a profit of $56. Now that I know $256, I can be aggressive in my marketing campaign, isn't it? Otherwise, I'll be very subdued. And let me take an example from my life. I was working in HSBC. I'm talking about 2004, 2005, 2006. And people of my vintage who are that old, if you have worked in the US context, you will realize that at that time, one of the very big thing in US was the free checking account. So almost every bank was offering a free checking account. HSBC was very small. It had around 450 branches all in the New York region. They wanted to expand tremendously. So they started actually offering this free checking account. And their basic proposition was, you will get the best interest rate with HSBC, period. No questions asked. So for example, if their competitor, Citibank, for example, increase their interest rate from 2 to 2.1%, HSBC in the following week will increase their interest rate to 2.1%. If the interest rate goes up to 2.4%, they will increase it to 2.4%. Why was HSBC able to do that? because at the back end, we had done a good analysis of what is the value that we get from a customer after we acquire it. So we said, in fact, we were so cutthroat in our competition at that time that if our response rate goes down from 1.6%, which we had actually predicted, to 1.2%, the number of customers acquiring will be less, so my acquisition cost will go up. It will ensure that I will not make even a single dollar on the entire cohort that I'm getting. Because of the bedrock, the foundation of customer lifetime value, HSBC was able to be so aggressive in the market, and we grew tremendously in an organic manner there. Okay, just one of the illustration. So it helps us to diagnose the health of the business, and it helps us in making tactical decisions. I hope you have been able to get this part, right? Now, there are a lot of, this is a very simple thing. There are a lot of issues with this approach. First of all, we have assumed that the profit contribution over a period of time is uncertain. It is uncertain. We have assumed it to be true. Like $80 is the amount that I'm going to make year after year after year. Our environment is so dynamic. The only thing constant is change. And you are saying that for 10 years, your profit margin is going to remain same. Oh my God, what are you really saying? That cannot be a good thing. So I need to vary my profit margin. Over the years, I need to see and project, work with the finance department to really see that in future, given the competition that is going to come into this era, especially because of these startups, how is it going to be like, right? What is attrition? Let me give you an example. We were working when I was in GE. One of the companies that I was in, was GE. So I was working on the JCPenney portfolio, and because it's 20 years old, so I can share the numbers with you as well as the name, because these numbers would have definitely changed in a very different manner now. The total number of credit card customers, JCPenney credit card customers, was 45 million. Humongous number. Let's get to the another number. How many customers had made one purchase in the last 3 years? 29 million. 16 million had not even made one purchase in the last 3 years. How many customers had made one purchase in the last 2 years? 24 million. How many customers had made one purchase in the last 1 year? Only 16 million. So what is attrition? Who are your customers? What are you really talking of? Is it so easy to say? Right? Each customer is different. What have we done here? $80 is your average profit. Can you really average it about each and every customer? No, you cannot. But if you try to calculate for each and every customer, it will become a humongous exercise. Plus, the data issues will not allow you to do that. So now that's a trade-off, isn't it? You want to do it, you can't do it for all the customers together, and you can't do it for a per customer basis. So somewhere or the other in the middle, you have to meet. So what is that right level? I need to decide that. How many segments should I do? 100, 200, 1000, 2000? That is again another part. What should be the discounting factor that I should use? It is definitely very important, as you have seen. I reduce the discounting factor from 15% to 10%, and my net profit, net lifetime value increased from 256 to 283. It really shows how confident I am in future. If I'm more confident about the future, I will actually use a lower discounting function, lower discounting rate. If I'm uncertain about the future, I will use a higher discounting factor. In the era where we are actually getting disrupted day in and day out, I think it's important to use a higher discounting factor. How do you treat the cost? What is fixed cost? What is variable cost? What cost are you really talking of? So these are some of the approaches. So really to say, the approach that we have done is a basic approach. Now, as we start modeling profit, we are increasing the complexity of the model, isn't it? As we start to look at attrition, we are starting to increase the complexity. As I start to do it for an average customer as compared to 1,000 segments, I'm starting to increase the complexity. Discounting factor, I'm playing around with it. Fixed. So the basic model is a quick and dirty model. After that, I'm trying to actually improve my model, and that requires a lot of modeling exercises. Okay. Now, there can be two situations. One is a simple retention model. These models assume that once the customer is attrited, the customer is lost to the company. For example, credit card customer. If the customer has stopped using my credit card, he has cut the credit card, I'll not be able to make any money from this guy. B2B businesses, magazine subscription, pharmaceutical drugs, all these things. If the customer is lost, the customer is lost to the company. So I need to retain the customer. And other is a migration model. So I, as a customer, can go in. Like, for example, I can go into Reliance retail store today. I might not go for the next 2 months. I might go again after 2 months. Then I might go, no, I might not go for 3 months. So I can keep on going in, coming out, going in, coming out. So that's a migration model. So in both these models, a different approach, we'll need to have a different approach, right? For really, in both these scenarios, the manner in which we will calculate the customer lifetime value is going to be different. Now, let's look at this simple retention model. What is the most important parameter in simple retention model? We have discussed it earlier. Retention rate, right? Retention rate is the most important thing. Look at this curve. Your retention rate, if it increases, your lifetime value increases. Very simple. This we all know. You don't need analytics to do this, right? But the problem is going from 0.6 to 0.7 is much more difficult as compared to going from 0.2 to 0.4, or going from 0.8 to 0.85 is going to cost you way too much resources as compared to going from 0.4 to 0.6. And that is the essential part. Do you want to have a retention rate of 1? Yes, I want to have a retention rate of 1. Can you have a retention rate of 1? No, it's difficult. It's utopia. Because cost increase very significantly. Just to take a parallel and digressing a little bit, to say how these concepts are related. Six Sigma, you all would be aware of it, isn't it? Six Sigma means, just one error and so many million instances. Is Six Sigma a noble intention to have? Yes, extremely noble. Oh my God, my business is only 2.3 Sigma. Should I spend and increase it to 4 Sigma at least right now? Yes, you can. You need to look at what is the value that you are going to gain, what is the additional revenue you will get from the customers, and what is the cost you need to spend. So it all depends on the value you generate. Cost benefit analysis. From moving from 2.6 Sigma to 4 Sigma is obviously going to cost you money. Are you able to get that much of money back from your customers? Do customers really appreciate the improved business processes? You are going to spend way too much money increasing your retention from 0.8 to 1. Do customers appreciate that part? Right? That's the most important thing. What is the approach? How will we do it? Let's, so I'll take an example of, I was with a large financial services company in Texas, a brilliant company. Brilliant company meaning like 2008 when the entire downturn was happening and companies were firing people left, right, and center. A financial services company, mind you. This company gave a bonus of 17% to its employees. It's that great a company. Oh, its NPS, its NPS is out of this world. RBS, the bank where I've worked, its NPS, Net Promoter Score, is minus 25%. This company that I'm talking of, its NPS is 75%. Amazing. They had a credit card portfolio. What we did was, so we looked at we had a 10-year history. So a cohort who has been acquired, say, in June 2010, how does this cohort behave over the next 10 years? We had that information. So we looked at various cohorts. How are customers dropping out? What is the attrition rate? Does the attrition increase? Is the attrition high during the initial years? Where does it stabilize? How does it happen? How much are the people spending? Is the spending very high during the initial years? So we got all the data and we looked at the cohort we looked at huge number of cohorts. Essentially every month can be a different cohort. So we looked at the last 36 cohorts. And basis that, we actually created an average, and then we had applied this approach. This approach, again, we have looked at it very simple. Revenue minus cost, right? Discounting rate and retention rate. That's it, simple. But the data that we had was enormously rich. And because the data was rich, I was able to do it, right? So because one of the most important parameter is retention rate, that is how we do it. The simplest way to calculate a retention rate is by direct observation. Using its customer base from year one, the firm can determine what percentage of this customer remained with the company in year two. The resulting retention rate is often assumed to apply for all the periods, right? That is what we did in this company, in Texas-based company. You can actually, do it in a very varied way, in a very detailed manner. Given the demographics or the behavioral, I have the demographics of the customer. Now, if the demographic of the customers are like this, what is the likely retention rate? So now I'm starting to go from an average customer to a segmented customer. If the customer has purple eyes and green hairs, then the retention rate is likely to be 65%. While if the person has actually purple hairs and green eyes, then his retention rate is going to be only 34%. And so I can segment the customer and create this lifetime value model for all the customers separately, right? So now suppose the longer, and this is the generic truth. If I have been, like, for example, the credit card that I hold is HDFC. I have been an HDFC customer for like last 10 years. What is the likelihood that I'm going to stop spending on HDFC card? Very less. I'm so happy to it. The way it rewards me is brilliant. So the retention rate itself can keep on changing as we go with time. So it's not that one retention rate for 10 years. So in fact, I can model my retention rate. And if I start modeling my retention rate, we have found that, the Weibull distribution is brilliant. So do you see, the formula was very simple, but as soon as you start modeling each and every aspect, you're starting to introduce complexity into it, right? The other way is retention, is the hazard model, the survival analysis. When will the customer attrite? So you can get it in months. So you can develop a survival analysis model. In fact, the hazard model in India, at least, all the companies that I've seen, hazard model is one of the most frequently used analytic technique for finding out the customer lifetime value. Why? Because it gives you, when is the customer likely to attract? Each and every customer, you can get down to a customer. So these are some of the complexities now, and this will help us in doing it, right?
Amar, just quick time check. We have about 30 minutes left for the session. Thank you.
We have about how much time left?
30 minutes, Amar. Yeah.
30
30.
minutes, half
Yeah.
an hour. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's look at the migration model. What is the migration model? Very simple. We have looked at it, okay? Now, okay, let's go back. There is one more example. Let me just take. So I was working for this bank called PNC. PNC is the 5th largest bank in US. One other thing I want to tell you. So one other thing I've told you is, survival analysis is one of the very simple, quick and dirty way to find that out. The other thing is, instead of trying to find out the value for, the next 10 years, a better approach would be to find out the value of the customer in the next 1 year. So for this bank, what were we doing? So for their small, medium enterprise business, the SME business, their question was, should we appoint a relationship manager for our customers? Now, really, the thought was that if the customer is important, then I should actually appoint a relationship manager. And I was their analytic consultant. And we had a team sitting in Bombay, in Seeps area. PNC team sits there. So, the proposition I gave them was, a customer has recently joined you. You have acquired a new customer. Obviously, he has not been able to, you have not been able to exploit this. Exploit is a bad word. You have not been able to develop this customer to the full potential. So the value of this customer is going to be very low. Should you actually ignore this customer? Oh no, you should not ignore. Okay, so what should we do? Instead of looking at the current value, look at the future value. Future value, how many years? That is when I propose, let's look at the value of the customer after 1 year. So, and every year we'll do this exercise. So the top 33% of my customer, top 1/3 of my customers who are there, basis the value after 1 year, I'll actually appoint a relationship manager for them. The balance 67% of the customers, I will ask them to use the mass market strategy, online channels or whatever it is, right? So this is how, and the how did we do that? Let's take, a banking product, a customer. How can the value of the customer increase? The value of the customer can increase by if he purchases a new product. The other way the value can increase is, today I have $100 in my account, tomorrow I have $150. The value of the value of the customer has increased, isn't it? $100 versus $150. But the value can also go down. Again, the same two ways. I had two products, I have attrited from one, I have only one product now. Or I had $200 in my account, now I have only $100. So we calculated all these four parameters for the four different parts of the bank. And through that, we were able to determine, like, for example, the credit product, for the deposit product, for the treasury product, for all these things, we did this. And the technique that we had used was the survival analysis. See, and that is another thing. Is there one approach to do customer lifetime value? No, there is not one approach. You have to look at the situation and then you have to design and customize your analytic approach to that particular situation. Okay, that's a very important thing. That is the other learning I want. So the few learnings which is there is, start with a quick and dirty model and then keep on breaking the assumptions, like for retention, like for profit. Okay, and keep on incorporating complexity into it. The second thing is, in the quick and dirty model, typically what I've seen is the hazard model or the survival analysis is actually a very frequently used one. And the third thing which I want to say is that, is there one approach to this particular, to customer lifetime value? No. You look at the situation and then do it. Very quickly, let's go over to the migration model. In the migration model, really what we are talking of is recency stage, right? It allows the customer to migrate among different states. The most common way of defining is how recently the customer has bought from the company, right? Obviously, recency. The model acknowledges that in contrast to the simple retention model, that the customer might not purchase. And in such cases, we use a Markov chain analysis, okay? So this is the recency stage. Let me show you, right. So the key parameter here is recency stage. What exactly is recency stage? So we assign a customer. So when did the customer buy? The customer bought in the last period. So recency stage J is equal to 1. The customer bought 2 periods back. J is equal to 2. The customer bought 3 periods back. J is equal to 3. Simple, no? Recency stage J. Another key parameter is recency probability. So if the customer is in recency state 1, what is the probability that he will go to recency stage 2, right? If I to tell you in real life, if I bought from Reliance store in this particular month, what is the probability that I'm going to buy from a Reliance store in the next month also? Okay, we are assuming right now, for a quick and dirty model, we are assuming that the probabilities do not change. Okay, so let's do, and a very simple model we'll do for a 4-period one. You can actually keep on increasing the complexity and go to, okay, so you are able to all see my screen. Let's look at this. Period 1, 2, 3. What are we really saying? Period 1, that means the customer is in recency stage 1. Period number 2, the customer has not bought in the last period. So we are in July right now. June, right? We have data till June. This is the customer who had bought in June. This is the customer who had bought in May but had not bought in June. This is the customer who had bought in April, did not buy in May and June. This is the customer who had bought in March. After that, he has not bought. What are we really saying? The customer who is in June, the likelihood of him to buy in July is 50%. So 50% of my customers in June are not going to buy in July. 20% of my customers who bought in May are going to buy in July. 80% are not going to buy. 10% of my customers who bought in April are going to buy. 90% of my customers are not going to buy. And if the customer has not bought for 3 months, he is never going to come back. Simple. This is a very simple model. You can actually increase this to 8, 9, 10. The complexity will increase. Now I've created this matrix. What is this matrix? How many customers do I have here? I have one customer. No customer here, right? In June, I had only one customer. In July, how many customers will I have? I'll have only 0.5 customers. This one will become 0.5, right? But this will become 0.5 here. So 50% of my customers will go into recency stage 2 because I am retaining only 50% of my customers. In time period 3, what will happen? There will be two parts. 50% of this 0.5 will come back, 0.25. But 20% of this 0.5 also will come. So 50% of 0.5 and 20% of 0.5, which is really, see, 50% of 0.5 and 20% of 0.5, which is 0.35. So I'm creating a transition matrix. What am I creating? I'm creating a transition matrix. I can keep on going on, and these are all basic logic, isn't it? And you are all into analytics, so you would love puzzles. This is really a puzzle I'm solving. How many customers will be here? The customers will be here, will be, this the customers who are there. So the customers, 20% of the customers go away, but there are 50% of the customers who come from here. I get that. Ultimately, the total number of customers has to be 1. Once I've got this transition probabilities, I know the amount of purchase that the customer will be making. Once I have the purchase, I multiply it by profit, I get the expected profit. Multiplied by discount rate, I get the discounted value. And so I get the net present value, right? So for 15 period, I get my net present value to be, the lifetime value to be 230.7. Even if I go to 100 period, this value increases to 231 only. Which means that if I do this analysis only for the first 10 period, that is good enough. The incremental gain that I get afterwards is not okay. So I can actually, this here is I don't know whether how many of you would know. So you all would be good with Excel, isn't it? What I've done is this is a data table. I've looked at the probability. So the probability that a customer buys again in period 2, the 80%, 20%, and period 2 and 30%, 50%. If I play around with that, I can get the sensitivity. Okay. So let me go back to the main sheet. So this is my sensitivity. So if I increase my probability in a particular manner, and in Excel, it's a very, very simple thing. In data option on the top, go into the data table option. What if analysis within that data table option, and the two variable thing, you will be able to develop it in a second, very quickly. So there is a convex relationship. So essentially, I know how much money is available to me if I increase. You see that in this case, we have, what had we done? 20% probability that a customer who didn't come, a customer who came in May, there is a 20% likelihood that he will come, he will shop again in July. Should I spend money in increasing that 20% to 30% or 40%? What is the money that I'll gain? That I can get through this analysis. Okay. So Markov chain really means, this is how a Markov chain looks like. Period T, R1, R2, R3, R1, R2, R3, probability P1, 1 minus P1, right? 0.5, 0.5 if you remember. P2, he is not going to do there. So now I'll go a little quickly because I'll be running a little short of time, but I still want you to understand that a very simple concept, extremely simple. It is really a 3 by 3 transition matrix. P1 is a probability that a person who shopped in period T shopped in period R1 also. Person who didn't shop in R1 and so his recency stage in time period T plus 1 will be R2, isn't it? That is 1 minus P1. This is P2. People who didn't shop in, these are the people who shopped in May. P2, which is 20%, right? 1 minus P2, 80%. R3, 10%, 90%, right? To just give you the recency stage, probability that the customer purchases at the end of the period. Once I have that, this is my acquisition cost, my gain metrics, this is my marketing cost. Every period I need to keep on making some marketing cost. This is my marketing cost. If I multiply these two things, I get my profit. Very simple. These are my transition probabilities. How to get this transition probability? We have seen in the Excel file. This is my gain metrics. This is the revenue that I get from the and then this is the firm's earning. This is the earning that I get. This is the spend in acquiring the spend. This is my profit metrics that I'll get, right? This is a lifetime. It can be the spend in maintaining the customer or customer relationship, whatever it is. So my profit really is this P transition metrics into this gain metrics. That is all. It is as simple as that. Nothing more. Okay, so you can do it on your own. Now let's try to generalize it. This is my total value that I derive. I will discount it. So see this value which is there. In year 2, I need to use a discounting factor to get it to my current period, right? Very simple. That is what I'm doing. I am discounting it, right? So this is a probability vector and this is my expected profit. This is my discounting factor. Very simple. And so I increase it and then I get that. So this is the Excel file which we have already looked at. Another metrics. Okay, so this is for 4 period. I will not go into this, but really it is the same thing that we keep on doing. I can keep on expanding from 3 period to 4 period, 5 period, 6 period. The only issue will be that your transition metrics will become little complicated. You have to be extremely careful. But in that also there is a check that sum of all the columns should equal to 1, right? That is what has to come. Okay. Right. So now let's look at this is the lifetime value save. This is a payoff metrics, and if we multiply these two things, we get to the profit margin, right? In our example, the Excel file that we had, if we do it this way, 0.5, 0.5, this was R1 and R2, 0.2, 0.8, 0.1, 0.9, 90% will not come back, 0.1 will come back, and then everybody will be lost, right? You remember this transition metrics, and then we have $100 if the customer shops, $100 if the customer is not shopping. Obviously, nothing will I will get. Multiply these two, I get 231.57. This is how we get it. Another way, we can do it very simply in Excel. Extremely simple. Now let's look at the complexity. Such model, what we have done, focuses on 4 things. Number of purchases in a given period. What is the amount that I'm purchasing? Are my customers really same? Heterogeneity of the parameters. Relationship period. How long will the customer survive? So if I have not purchased for 1 year, will I ever come back? Now this is not true for all the stores. Shoppers Stop will have a different kind of a transition metric as compared to Lifestyle, as compared to DMart, as compared to Reliance Retail. And then the heterogeneity in the purchases, similarly heterogeneity in the relationship period, heterogeneity in the parameters governing the lifetime model. So those are the 4 things. Over the years, the various approaches have been used by data scientists, right? And various models have been used. So the various model like Poisson. So now when you are trying to model this thing, the transition metric that we have looked, again, a quick and dirty model, very simple, do it. Lifetime purchases or inter purchases, you can model it using Poisson distribution, you can model it using Bernoulli distribution, you can model it using exponential distribution, you can model it using geometric distribution, different things. what matches the real life scenario, experiment with it, do it. So that's the analytic approach that you can develop. Okay. Now, there are obviously a lot of issues with this. Okay. Let's take a step back. We started this webinar with an introduction to CLV and the reasons why this parameter give a very unique perspective into business. And then we went into the basic modeling of calculating the CLV, moved into greater complexity. There has been an extremely wide range of techniques that have been used. Okay, so for example, we looked at the survival model. This time dependent modeling technique. In fact, the company that I talked of, the large financial services company in Texas, they were trying to perfect this model of customer lifetime value. It was like a 2.5 year. They used survival model accompanied with the Cox proportion hazard modeling. Okay, in PNC we did a very quick and dirty thing using the hazard model. In 2 months flat we had been able to develop the future value of the 3 months, in fact, the future value of the customers. And so we got to that place. There have been other regressions models that have been used for predicting. So now let's move into this last section where we'll discuss about some of the issues. Right? Estimated future revenue. One of the things that we have been doing, this is the most important thing, revenue. Ultimately, you are trying to predict the current value of all the future revenues, isn't it? So I need to have a very good estimate of revenue. The typical manner in which we calculate revenue is to find the revenue for each customer for all the period, sum it up for all the portfolio, find the average across all the customers, across all the period. So for the 10-year period, in case of this financial services company, I will have one revenue model, one revenue number. That is what the finance department also uses. That's the average number that is to be used in the model. It's a very, very simplistic thing. And it's also a very naive estimation. Naive
Hey,
customers, yeah.
hey, Amar, this is Devesh. Sorry to interrupt you. We have about 17 minutes left. So could we
Yeah,
just
I have actually 5 minutes, 5, 10, a couple of minutes more. I'll actually find out.
thank you.
So I can actually complete this, I can model the revenue in a very different manner. Similarly, one of the basic aspect is I can have a trend model. Uh, some of the models that have been used, multiple regression or the log linear model, we have already talked about the hazard model. Customer portfolio. To what level should you actually segment the customer? Are low customer necessarily low profit customers? These are some of the things, So how deep should you go? What level of segmentation should you have? We've already discussed earlier. What is the retention rate that is good for you? How much money should you spend in improving the retention rate from 60% to 65%? How do you incorporate that into the model? Another complexity. Then the customers are not normal. Typically, whenever we talk about the customer, oh, they follow a bell curve. They don't follow the bell curve. Sometimes they can be skewed. The 80-20 rule. Now, if the customers are really that way, how do we identify this customer? What is the value that they are deriving? Do we have one value for all the CLV? Again, goes into segmentation and each and every segment. Cost. What is fixed cost? What is variable cost? What is the marginal costing? These are all the approaches. And the more you go into it, the more you discuss about it, the more, and you try to model it, the greater the complexity of the model will be. Discounting rate, again, we have talked about it earlier. If I'm very optimistic about the future, I'll use a lower discount rate. If I'm very uncertain about the future, I will obviously use a higher discount rate, right? Greater the risk in the project, greater the uncertainty, higher the discount rate. Marketing responses. My $20 that I'm spending on my marketing spend right now, will I keep on spending only $20? No. Or I'll have to spend $25 because so many startups are coming in. How do I model that? So the marketing spend, the marketing effort that I need is going to also change completely. This pandemic, it is disrupting the manner in which we engage with the customer. The priorities of the customers are changing. I'll have to relook at all the models completely right now. Okay. Word of mouth, general referral, again, a lot of other things. In short, this is a slide I will actually, let me come to this slide afterwards. Summary slide. Essentially, what we are saying is you have the transaction data, you have the order history. One of the most important thing, loyalty data and the customer demographic. These are the things. The toolkit, you have the RFM based segmentation. So one of the very simple, quick and dirty segmentation, RFM analysis. 111 to 555, you have 125 segments. Average order value for each and every customer, average purchase frequency. Combine these two using survival analysis and supervised learning like random forest, you will get your CLTV. Very quick and dirty model. In 2-3 months, you will be able to do it. And this, is that really bad? No, it's not bad. It still gives you a lot of things, like it helps you to identify your profitable customer, helps you to find out the propensity, so on and so forth. One example, this is one of the example where in a CPG company we did RFM analysis and we did that. But let me go back to this thing. Customer satisfaction, I can model customer satisfaction. It has a positive influence on CLV. Marketing effort, cross buying, upselling, multi-channel purchasing, RFM analysis, recency, frequency, monetary promotion. All these things can be modeled. So what my emphasis, and the last 1 minute 30 seconds, my emphasis in this presentation has been to expose to you the basics of customer lifetime value, 2 different approaches of it, and then show to you how you can actually increase the complexity and do it. Like for example, retention model, you can use a Fable distribution, right? For revenue, you can use the geometric progression or you can use the Poisson distribution. So this is something you start with a quick and dirty model, then do that. Okay, let me take a breather now. Devesh, I'm open to questions now. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Amar. So let me just pull out the questions that we've received so far, and I'll request the attendees to put the questions on the chat windows. We have about 3 questions for now. We have the first one from T. Subarayadu. He's asking, does implementation of CLV not include tuning the company's costing system on activity-based lines, if not present already? And my general readings on CLV indicate that a customer acquisition cost should not be ignored in CLV computation.
Good question, both of them. See, on the part of the part that you said about activity costing, that's a very right one. That is why one of the big challenges which I've mentioned in my presentation also is cost. How do you know what is your variable cost? How do you know what is your fixed cost? What are you really trying to do there? Is it so easy? Because say for example, marketing, they do a mailer, right? They send out a mailer and they get the response. Now for this particular activity, can you get the exact cost from the finance department? At times it becomes very difficult. And the world that we are living in, say for example, the campaign, how do you find out the effectiveness of campaign? Say for example, I send out a mailer and this mailer was, please take my credit card of SBI, State Bank of India credit card, please take it. The person doesn't take a credit card. He in fact he takes a personal loan. Now the credit card mailer will say, oh, you know what? I sent a mailer. So the person was reminded of SBI. That is why he probably that helped him in actually increasing the brand equity. And that is where he actually took a personal loan. So there can be a direct response. There can be a secondary response. So that itself is a difficult exercise. So I completely agree with you. Activity based costing, yes, the company has to move towards that. There are a lot of changes as well in the way we do it, and that is where just the question that you have asked me shows that you have understood the complexity to do that. But if it is complex, does it mean that I will not do CLV? That is my basic proposition. Yes, it is complex, but still I will at least develop a quick and dirty model. So at least give some idea about the customer. Is the value of my customer 200 or 2000? At least I'll get some idea about that, no? And if I get that ideas, I will actually be able to design my marketing strategy basis that. That was the first part of the question. The second part of the question, can you say that again, Devesh?
Sure. So it was, I think it was more of a comment in the sense that,
Acquisition cost.
The
The
acquisition cost,
acquisition
but
cost.
not the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm differentiating between acquisition cost and the life cycle spend. The cost that I need to do to keep the customer with me. These are two different costs. The acquisition cost is only at the start. I'm acquiring the customer. But after that, all the costs that I spend in actually maintaining the relationship with the customer, I'm talking about it separately. And that I'm including in my model. You look at that, that matrix there where we had M minus C. So I'm including those costs there. Okay. Uh, that is where, so the acquisition cost typically, see, you can, if you include the acquisition cost, your net value should come to zero. As compared to that, I have $256, so I can spend two. So it's, the way you actually look at it. It's really the same thing. I don't know if I've been able to answer uh, either a follow-up question to that, or can we move to the next question?
Uh, Subhaya Raidu, do you have any follow-up to that? You can
Uh,
unmute yourself and say.
not really. I think actually that question, the second part of the question I asked based on the initial slide, but in the subsequent slides, I saw that the acquisition
Yeah.
cost is pretty much being included in the analysis actually.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Then thanks, Subha Rayadu. So, Amar, we have another one from Ricky. How do we apply discounting on cost as it will decrease with time, with efficiencies being realized through production planning?
See, excellent question again. And why I say excellent, I'll give you a reason also for that. Your question tells me that you have understood the complexity of the thing. Cost. Will my cost remain same for 10 years? No, it's not going to. The amount that I'm spending today on TV advertising is going to change over a period of time. The cost that I incur in actually getting one hit on Google is going to also increase over a period of time. How can I assume that that will remain same? Now, that doesn't mean that I can't do anything about it. Let me see how the costs have been over the last 2 years, 3 years, month by month, week by week, whichever way you want to do it. For different channels, it will be different. And then can I actually try to model that also? As soon as I start to model that, what do you get? You are actually increasing the complexity of model. So that is where, what did this company in Texas do? They started off with a quick and dirty model, which was developed in 3 months. Then they kept on breaking these assumptions, one assumption, second assumption, third assumption, and kept on modeling it. So after, at the end of 2 year period, they had a much more robust and a better model, which would give them greater insight. Okay. So the cost, I completely agree with you. It is not going to remain same. In fact, the world that we live in, to say that anything is going to remain same even for 1 year is being completely foolish. The other, one other thing which you have not asked, but let me add to that. Can I see the future? If somebody says I can see what next 2 years are going to be like, I'll say, oh, you are joking. That is the difficulty now a lot of the researchers are facing with this customer lifetime value. That is why, if you remember, what is it that I said? Do not try to project for the entire lifetime. Even though the topic is customer lifetime value, it might be just good enough that you try to predict for the next 1 year. Take a year at a time, because the world that we live in is changing so fast. Why do you want to spend so much of energy in actually trying to do the customer lifetime? Do the future value of the customer. After 1 year, what is the value of the customer going to be like? In the 2 months that you have developed this model, that will give you very good clues into it. And next year, you don't know. The scenario might change, scenario might not change. If it changes, you are ready for it. Your time earlier has not been, you didn't spend the time unnecessarily. You are now spending the time in a perfect manner. Isn't it? I hope that answers your question. A little longer answer, but as a professor, I've learned how to answer it in a longer manner as compared to a smaller one. Yeah, but I just want to give you a perspective into it.
Ricky, you have a follow-up or?
Yes. Hi, Amar. This is Ricky.
Yeah, hi.
So,
Yeah.
my question was more focused on the accounting costs. of the product
Okay.
that is created. So what happens is, what I've noticed is that, when we look at the financials of the company and look at the cost that they have, predicted for this year and next year, it remains constant. As you said,
Yeah.
when you see that cost is not changing over a period of 3 years for a product that has been in the market for now 2 years,
Yeah.
that's something, it bothers you.
Strange.
So I
Yeah.
want, yes. So that's what I wanted to know. In your experience, how have you overcome that complexity in that model?
See. Yeah. See. To be very frank, a lot of the customers that you get in India, whether it is like BCG or publicity, whether you take media companies, whether you take CPG companies, the important thing that remains typically is that everybody wants a quick and dirty model first of all. Let's start with it. Very few companies actually have, a life cycle of 2-3 years. Let's spend 3 years in developing this Taj Mahal. No, I'm fine with a small house that I'm going to make. Okay. So many times as an analyst, when I was working in the corporate world, the flexibility that I had to explore these dimensions were actually limited. Okay. As an academician, it gives me this freedom that I can do it. So have I worked on actually modeling the costs and all? Frankly speaking, not. Like for example, this financial services company in Texas that I said, when we were looking at this credit card, when we were developing this model for credit card customers, again the cost was given to us and the cost was fixed, and this was one of the questions that we had asked. So is there any model or something that I've applied? If that is your question, that has not been, I've not worked primarily into that, but essentially I have to look at the data and see how best can I model it. You'll have to do that. I don't know if I'm
Thank you,
able
Amar.
to answer
No,
completely,
no,
but
you
yeah,
you
yeah.
you did, you did. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, okay, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amar. Well, with
Thank
that,
you.
I think we come at the, almost at the top of our time that we had.
Sure.
Many thanks for taking out time today and, walking us through this concept.
Thank you.
I'm definitely very, very intrigued, with this entire CLV predictive modeling concept of it. And I would also like to thank each of our members, who attended the session today. And we will continue bringing more of these learning sessions through the Sunday webinars that we have. So with that, I'll wish you all a happy, safe Sunday and a week ahead as we meet on next Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Devesh. And it was definitely wonderful. Anytime I can get to talk about these beautiful, wonderful concepts, it's always good. Because every time I speak, I also learn a little bit. So thank you very much again,
Sure.
audience.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Amar.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day. Thank you.